Oh, what the fuck wrong? Hello, testing. Okay. He was skeptical of reading the book, and now he already loves it in chapter 2. I think there's something notable there where he resists advice too much. He doesn't appreciate that the people giving him advice know stuff he doesn't know. And then for this, it's not manageable, he's like lost. But I'm gonna reply to that in the post about that. Summaries aren't going to be perfect. You shouldn't expect them to be perfect and have no possible misreadings. That's not a reasonable goal, to have the summary be totally unambiguous between what it actually means and a obscure alternative meaning. Hello. Oh, here's what he's talking about. It's in a totally different place. But, okay. But he's wrong. Alright. I hope that helps. Why does this one have no attribution lines? What the fuck? There's one paragraph at the end. It's replying to something from 4 months ago? 4.5 months ago. Okay, so 4.5 months later, he opens his paragraph by saying, I think I got a little confused while I was writing this about what I was criticizing. So he starts after a 4.5 month break with a backwards reference word in his first sentence, and I do not know what it's referring to. Does it mean his previous post? Does it mean a particular section in his previous post, such as the last one? Does it mean the whole thread, the whole discussion? And why is he talking about what happened while writing a thing that he did like 4 months ago? Does he actually remember what he was thinking at the time? Because I don't think so. If you're going to try to introspect about your thoughts while writing a specific thing, you shouldn't be doing it 4 months later. You won't remember well enough. I didn't understand something. What did you not understand? I don't know what something is, because I assumed that this article is written to lay people, that's bad grammar, who don't read much and don't participate in any kind of forums where misunderstandings are commonplace. Does he mean virtually everyone? He can't write basic stuff without making, like, multiple errors per sentence, but he's telling me, he's lecturing me on how to write clearly and what I should do. If only I was a better writer, I could do the things he's telling me to do. Except he has no idea how to be even a decent writer. That's not a reasonable thing for a bad writer to tell a good writer, you should be better. No one's writing this better than me, and he's just saying, it's possible you should do this thing I want you to do. He has no insight into how to accomplish it or how to improve my writing or the writing of anyone else who's good. He's very arrogant, demanding, and pushy, while also AFKing for literally 4 months in the middle of the conversation. That's a very bad combination. It's not like he's persistently trying to improve or work on things regularly. He just disappears, then comes back out of the blue and writes a confusing, preachy lecture as if he is my equal, when he doesn't even try to do philosophy on a regular basis. And his writing is terrible. It's unclear what the purpose of this email is, what the takeaway is, what the call to action is, what he wants to happen next. He just disappeared for months and then he wrote a dead-end post with no clear way to move forward. There's no question, there's nothing that invites a reply. He does not want tangential replies about all the things I've just been saying out loud. Like, that's pretty clear. So I think I will move on. Now, this one does not have attributions, so he's violating the list guidelines in just one of the most basic ways. I don't know how you do this, because if you use any email client and you hit reply, you will have an attribution line at the top. So he deleted it on purpose in order to ruin his post. And he's replying to something that's months old and with no attributions. I don't know who he's talking to. Reading this, it's probably me. I can search for it, but I shouldn't have to. And it did not come up. Is he quoting from the internet? Okay, not only is he quoting from the internet, but he's misquoting. You see how this looks like it's one paragraph? He's removed the blank line between the two different paragraphs. So he's misquoting me without a source. What are these statements? He doesn't say why he's making the statements. What is the goal of them? What's he trying to accomplish? What's the purpose of this post? Like, what these statements don't make sense on their own. There's some sort of hidden context that he just completely neglected to communicate. Like, is he trying to summarize what I said? Because, in a normal discussion, you reply to someone by replying to them, not by restating what they just said. If you're going to restate what they said, you should say, this is my attempt to restate what you said, or something that explains what's going on. It's just really confusing to do what he's doing. He's terrible at communication. Like, really bad at communication. Like, this is below average communication. This isn't just, FI has high standards. This is actually below average communication. Right, so he saw in this discussion that there were misunderstandings and miscommunications or difficulties or whatever. And then did he maximize clarity? No, he wrote these completely out of the blue, out of context statements. No framing, no attribution, no idea what's going on. Why is he writing this post? What's the point of it? What's the topic? No explanation of anything. Anyways, this is not my problem. He doesn't pay me, unlike Jest, who actually contributes money. So I was helpful to Jest, and I'm not going to reply to this junk. If he watches the video, he can get some help, because that would be more on his own initiative. Like, if he actually cares enough to watch all my streams and he finds that my reply to him, he's welcome to have it. But if he doesn't care that much to do that kind of thing, then I don't really want to go out of my way to point him at this stuff that, if he's not making that kind of effort to watch my streams, I think he won't like it. If he's actually trying that hard enough that he watches the stream on his own, then there's a decent chance he would actually like and appreciate it. So I'm just gonna move on. Zhao's post was kind of like if Andy wrote this post but deleted the first sentence, so it just started with the example, and you're like, what the hell is this example for? And also, if you got rid of the yes no from the subject line, so you didn't know what it was in regards to, that would also make it more similar. So there'd just be even less context. But seriously, you delete this first sentence, and it would just be like really confusing. By the way, if anyone else wants to reply to Zhao, that would be great. Like, people need more practice talking to people, and it's good to talk to a variety of people, and it is an opportunity for you to talk to a different person and try something. You can practice your persuasion or your question asking or whatever. Like, you could come up with some sort of goal in the discussion and then practice and see what works. You could test out some of your ideas about communication. And maybe some of your ideas will be good or work in some way. I've already tested a lot of ideas, and it's harder for me to find things I haven't already tested that I want to test, but other people should do plenty of that. That's good, Kyle. A lot of people are really unclear on their goals, and it helps to try to think about them. A lot of people like go through life just not thinking about what they're doing very much. So actually trying to think about what you do is an advantage. This is good. People are able to answer questions for me by linking to my stuff. This is also linking to my stuff. I put this page online. This is selected words from BOI. So both of these replies are my fan base referring someone to material I already made. So he was already answered, but I had some other things to add. Okay, I'm trying to mark red the ones I just looked at. Alright, so that was that. What is this about? So, posting error here. I'm guessing he's not using a markdown editor and also isn't paying much attention to what he's doing. But if you did this in a markdown editor, it would be hard to miss if you looked at the preview. What's the hotkey for that? Command Shift H. Wait, what? There you go. Oh, right. A lot of markdown stuff applies quoting to the next paragraph if you don't have a line break. So if you mush paragraphs together with single line breaks instead of full blank lines between them, it can look like it's quoted. My blog does not extend quotes like that. You have to actually quote on a line by line basis, not a until the next double line break basis. Okay, so all the rest are podcast questions. Well, except the sleepy one is in the podcast question thread, but they actually want a video. So it's a YouTube request. So this should work. This is stuff I was testing, it's not ready yet. So, testing, hello, hello. Testing, hello, hello. I didn't hear anything. Did you guys hear anything? Testing, hello, hello. Testing, hello, hello. Oh, you guys are getting audio. Why am I not getting audio? What do you mean? Oh, did my headphones disconnect themselves? That's my guess. Yup. Maybe my iPhone stole them? Let's check. No, they are not connected to my iPhone. Oh, did they just turn themselves off? Oh, they're off. Okay. Oh shit, they're low battery? But I had them plugged in earlier, I thought. Oh well. Alright, time to switch headphones. I will fix the audio after I have headphones. Okay, we have Beat Studio 3 connect. Battery level 13%. Whatever. I have other headphones if these run out. Testing, hello. Okay. You can't actually see the volume controls when you're not playing a video. Therefore, I will open a video. This will work.
The follows, guys.
Okay.
Mario
We've got 100% volume.
Party with the onesie. Yeah, SpongeBob. We'll be playing Mario Party with Junie in the onesie.
Okay, the volume appears to be reasonable for you guys. Testing, hello, hello. Testing, hello, hello. Alright, so Audio Hijack did in fact record audio. So I can now make podcasts while streaming, and the audio will both go to the stream and also to the podcast. Okay, I don't even need my headphones anymore. Actually, I'm gonna plug these in. Alright, I have 2 dead headphones charging, and I can switch if I need headphones to my Sony ones. And if all else fails, I can get a cord. But I only needed headphones to test that the recording was working. So, nostalgia. What do I want to say about nostalgia? That's how they sold the book, Ready Player One. That's not what I wanted. Ready. There we go. Yeah, nostalgia helped sell this terrible book. Here's a very detailed, extensive review. I would call it a fallible ideas list worthy analysis. This is one of the better online forums that no one's ever heard of, I think. I mean, it's not small, but I've never really seen anyone ever mention it other than Justin, who told me it existed. Because mostly only people involved with lawyer stuff know about it, I think. Maybe some finance guys as well. As you can see from some of the usernames, it is not SJW friendly. Contrary to the many people's assumption, having usernames like this does not in fact mean that the discussion quality is low. And Charles 12 has a very high quality analysis of a mainstream book that fooled, millions or hundreds of thousands, I don't know, of gullible people. It has almost as many Amazon reviews as a Game of Thrones. They're overwhelmingly 4 and 5 stars, and the film made $500 million, and there's a sequel being made. So, super successful book that got very good reviews from New York Times, Wired, NPR, and Patrick Rothfuss, who is a fantasy author who I don't like. But he's popular and shit. And so it's not just fooling the lay people, but it's getting positive reviews from authority figures, including like an actual author who ought to have some judgment or whatever, but I thought his own book was bad, The Name of the Wind, so maybe that's why. But on the other hand, Brandon Sanderson, who I think is really good, recommended Patrick Rothfuss, who I think is bad. So I think it's partly they just all recommend each other. It's like the popular people praise the popular people and just pass around recommendations, so everyone in the in crowd wins and everyone not in the in crowd loses. I think there's a lot of that going on, and people, they just don't want to offend the other people with large audiences. There's a lot of sucking up to the people with power. There's also sucking up to like minorities, like the whole diversity hire kind of shit. There's that. Like Brandon Sanderson recommended a book that was really bad. Like Rothfuss's book was like normal bad fantasy, like it was okay. It wasn't super bad or anything. I just didn't like it, but I didn't think it was terrible. I just thought it was a bit boring and long and pointless and whatever. Like not exciting. As opposed to like Ready Player One is like actively really, really bad. And anyways, Brandon Sanderson recommended a different fantasy book that I read that was like one of the worst books I've ever read. and it was by a black female, if I remember correctly. And so I think there was some diversity shit going on there. What was it called? Like, 8. No, this is not it. I'm remembering the name wrong. Fuck, what was it? It's this total sex fantasy where the main character is having sex with a dark god in this like largely abandoned castle area where there's some sort of politicking for power, and there's only like a couple characters. It's a very empty world. But it's basically like a Molly Sue thing, where the main character is just, always wins, always powerful. Or Mary Sue, not Molly Sue. Yeah. So it's Mary Sue, and it's clearly like wish fulfillment by the author, like more blatant than your average fanfic. And somehow Brandon Sanderson was recommending it. And it included like literally her having sex with the dark god. With of course no negative consequences from the unwise promiscuity with the powerful male. But it's like Twilight to the extreme, like fucking a vampire, but ramp it up to 11. God, what was the name of it though? I remembered the name a while ago so I could complain about it. I don't know. Oh well. If you read it by accident because I forgot the name, I guess that's your fault anyways. Sorry. Okay, so there's this nostalgia question, which I didn't actually think about much yet. But that's okay, let's make a podcast. It will stop recording if I stop talking for 2 seconds. Anonymous asks a question about nostalgia. Have Rand, Saws, or any of the other big thinkers anything to say on nostalgia? I've never been much for it, but as I have faced a rough half a year on a couple of fronts, personal as well as business, I have developed a strong nostalgia for the 80s and 90s. I understand it means some sort of yearning for a better past. Do you have anything to say on why so many people get nostalgic when they grow up? Why, when, and how to not get stuck in it? I think it is bad because it can take away one's focus of today and the future. Is it because we are not happy with where we are today? So I agree that it's generally bad, but not entirely bad. It's good to be introspective and to think about your life and your past, and more so recent things. Like, you had a conversation yesterday. What could you have said differently so it would have turned out more to your liking? Uh, rethinking, replaying in your head that kind of conversation is a good thing. It's how you learn to do better next time. And considering things from further in your past is a similar kind of activity, but you should be doing less of it. Like the further back in time it goes, in general, then you should be giving it less thought. To the point where it's often zero thought unless it was particularly important. Like if it's more than a month old and it's not important, then you probably shouldn't be thinking about it anymore. Okay, and then another tangential comment about nostalgia is it helped sell a very bad book called Ready Player One. And in the podcast description, I will put a link to a very extensive review of that book. which I thought was a very high quality review. A lot of research and effort went into it. It's very long, and I thought it was good, the review. It was a lot of detailed analysis, and it's not from a philosopher. He's not an FI poster, so it's like a different kind of person, but still doing good work of the type of, and it's kind of the kind of thing that FI would like to do, like textual analysis, understanding the details. There's a lot of criticism. He catches the author in contradictions and plot holes and stuff. So that's nice. It's on a free speech forum where you can say naughty things that SJWs would not approve of. And so it's nice that good forums exist with good content. It's not a perfect forum by any means, but I'm happy it exists, and there's a decent amount of decent quality stuff there. Contrary to people's belief that if you're allowed to say mean things or mean words, then clearly everyone must be stupid and all their ideas must be wrong or whatever, you know? People can be like rude to each other while actually making good points. And by contrast, you see a lot of discussions where people are being all polite to each other while making terrible points and no one's calling each other out on anything. Anyways, I'll link that. So back to nostalgia. I don't recall Rand or Saws saying anything in particular about it, or DD. But the thing I was saying about replaying conversations in your head, I'm pretty sure DD wrote an email praising that and talking about why it was good. I think that was like an old TCS email or something. I forgot where it was from. But I believe he did that. I think a lot of nostalgia is because people are bad at updating their preferences. So they form preferences like when they're teenagers or young adults, and then they just never change them a lot. And then the world changes, the culture changes, so they become out of date. And you see this like with fashion where people are wearing clothes that are 10, 20, 30 years out of date because they didn't update. And, that's not a big deal. Who cares if you're not looking fashionable? Like, unless you're trying to look fashionable, it's okay. But if your preferences for movies, TV shows, music, etc. get really out of date, then it's awkward because you have to find old stuff. You don't get to enjoy the new stuff. So that's why you get like nostalgic, or it's a reason. Because you're finding that there's all this new stuff being created that you don't like, but you remember liking this old stuff. So you want more of the old stuff that's like what you already like, because you're not appreciating the new stuff. Now, to some extent, that can be your fault because you're failing to learn what's good about the new stuff. You're not putting effort into understanding it. Your thinking is stagnant. You're not seeing the value in the new things. But also, sometimes there can be downward trends, and so the older stuff can actually be better. On average, worldwide, things are getting better, not worse, so things trend upwards on average. But for any particular area, like music or movies or something, it's totally possible for there to be downward trends for years or decades even. Especially for like certain aspects of them. Like, one example in gaming, when 3D games came out, they got a lot of attention and development effort. And they have some advantages over 2D games, and they also have some disadvantages. And so there was a period of time where not enough 2D games were being made, and not enough effort was going into 2D gaming. And 3D games are definitely not strictly better. So there ought to be effort into 2D and 3D. And I think there is now. Mobile has helped it, and indie development has helped it. And 2D games tend to be easier to make. And they tend to be more suited for certain types of games, like strategy games. But there are other reasons to have them. Anyways, so I think there was maybe a period of 10 years where 2D games were getting underserved, and that has improved lately. Another trend in gaming is it's gotten more and more mainstream, which has resulted in games being easier and easier. And so nostalgia for games that were actually hard enough makes sense. And there are certainly good players who play primarily old games because they don't like how it's been dumbed down to make it easy enough for the masses of stupid people to succeed without much thought. Because a lot of people don't want to think, but collectively they have more money than the people who do want to think. So when gaming was for like the early adopters in the computer industry, it was harder. And it was also because back then games were a lot smaller, and so by making them hard, they would make them longer. But nowadays, they're pandering to the mainstream, not the early adopters, and they're able to make big, long games. They don't need difficulty to stretch out the time it takes to finish the game. And so a lot of games really suck now. Not all of them, there's some good games, and there's a variety. And I think overall things are better, but there's definitely some major downward trends. And so downward trends can cause like nostalgia, especially when you don't understand what's going on. You just sort of vaguely know that you liked something better about some of the past stuff. Nostalgia can be more specific, more suspect when it's not about a specific thing. If you just like certain old games, you know, maybe not a big worry, probably fine. But and the same if you like some specific old movies or music or something, or old clothes, probably not a big concern. But if it's just sort of generally remembering the past fondly and sort of wishing you were living in the past and not liking your current life in general, rather than just having specific complaints about specific products, then maybe you have more of a problem. Especially if you're unhappy now and you just like wish you were in a better situation, or if you want like a do-over on part of your life, if you regret some of your choices, to like fondly remember before you made those choices that you regret. Those kinds of things can be bad. Like you need to make your current life good and focus most of your thinking on your current situation, and living a life that you like and you're happy with and whatever, and solve your problems. Like you don't want to escape from your problems and ignore them. You want to actually solve them and do something about them. Asks a question about nostalgia. Okay, have Rand, Saws, or any of the other big thinkers anything to say on nostalgia? I've never been much for it, but as I have faced a rough half a year on a couple of fronts, personal as well as business, I have developed a strong nostalgia for the 80s and 90s. I understand it means some sort of yearning for a better past. Do you have anything to say on why so many people get nostalgic when they grow up? Why, when, and how to not get stuck in it? I think it is bad because it can take away one's focus of today and the future. Is it because we are not happy with where we are today? Yes. So I agree that it's generally bad, but not entirely bad. It's good to be introspective and to think about. By the way, I'm going to compare. Without silence removal is 10:07. The silence removal got 39 seconds out of 607. So it removed 6.5%. Anyway, I need to get the link into the description. It was 80s, right? Yeah, it was 80s. Okay. But okay. All right, one podcast done. Move that one. Move that one. And this one. Which I might not do today because it involves video. I don't know, we'll see. I was gonna keep it shorter today because yesterday I got overly mentally tired from my 4-hour writing session about DD. His bad email about Ayn Rand. Alright, and this one also, they wanted a song thing. Okay, so I'll leave those two unread for now. So we're gonna do these three. Introspection, bad parenting sanction, and these Rand quotes. So when you introspect, how do you make sure you are being honest and are not rational? N asks, when you introspect, how do you make sure you are being honest and are not rationalizing? Okay, first point, read my essay on lying. It is at rationalessays.com/lying. The link will be in the description. Second point, practice introspecting with easier stuff. If you get good at it with stuff where there's less temptation to lie and it's easier to check if you're lying in some way, find things like that where it's easier to get it right, you're not tempted to lie, you have some way to actually check whether you're right or wrong about what you introspected. Look for opportunities like that. So start with the easy stuff and get better at it and check that you're doing it right and work your way up to introspecting about harder stuff. Third point, think critically about it. Cross-check some of your opinions against each other and look for internal contradictions. Look for ways your story doesn't make sense. Look for discrepancies. Look for vague parts where you're leaving things out. You might be hiding some lying to yourself in the part where you don't fully verbalize what you're saying. Next point. Talk to other people and give them feedback and criticism. If you can get good at analyzing other people's stories, introspections, beliefs, claims, etc., you can catch when they're being honest or rationalizing, not honest or rationalizing. Then you'll be better at catching yourself. Like, it's easier to start with noticing other people's lies and rationalizations than your own. So work on that, practice that, and don't just form judgments, but also try to check them. So you can often form an opinion of someone, and then you keep talking to them, and then more information comes out, and you can find out whether you're right or wrong in your earlier judgment. So in that way, you can get better and better at making judgments with less information. You try to form early judgments, and you see what information you really need to form a judgment and what information is unnecessary. And then you get more information, you can check whether you're right, and you can keep doing that and getting better at it. And then the next thing is to share your thinking with other people and get criticism, get feedback. You can do this about your exact thoughts, or you can also do it about hypothetical situations that you think share some important attributes with your situation. Being able to figure out what's actually important about your situation, what the impersonal parts that matter are, being able to differentiate what's parochial and what's not parochial, what are the key concepts and what's irrelevant, is actually an important skill. Like, that's part of understanding your own situation, is being able to do that. So if you can't hypotheticalize your situation, that's an indication you don't understand it very well. And again, you can work your way up. You can hypotheticalize easier things. You can hypotheticalize things where you don't need privacy, there's no concern, just for practice, and you can get better at it over time, work your way up. And you can also get feedback on that. You can tell people, you can hypotheticalize something and get some comments, and then also share the full version and then ask about your hypotheticalizing. Did you hypotheticalize well or not? You can get critical feedback if you show people both your hypothetical version and then also the full real version. As long as you're doing it with practice stuff where you don't actually need privacy, then that'll work fine. You can also get feedback on your theories on privacy. You can discuss that topic. And then you can learn common cultural stuff. So a lot of your errors and ideas and whatever else will follow standard patterns. Like, sometimes you'll be unique or have your own idea, but lots of times you'll have the standard view. So studying the standard view can help you. You can also work on your thinking skills in general. If you get better at logic and critical argument and whatever, you'll be better at catching your own logical errors and argument errors and so on. So improve your skills, work your way up step by step, etc. Get feedback. It also helps if you break things into parts. If you take complicated issues and you figure out how to separate them into reasonably independent parts that you can work on separately. Similar to hypotheticalizing, if you can't do that, it's a sign of lack of understanding of some aspect of what you're dealing with. And if you can do it, that helps indicate that you understand what you're doing, and also makes it easier. And that is a skill you can practice in general and get better at before using it in the hard cases. Also, listen to my podcasts related to introspecting, and also go to fallibleideas.com and then go to the emotions essay at fallibleideas.com/emotions. And that is relevant to a lot of the ways people, the problems people have in this area. And this one is 527 out of 611. They got a better removal ratio this time. There was something I was going to say in the middle that I forgot, and then I just added some other points and gave up on remembering it, but that I paused once or twice trying to remember. But one point got lost, but that's okay. I had some things to say. The question didn't have a lot of detail in it. Okay, well, that one's ready. Oh, I didn't upload yet, but that's okay. Anonymous asks, when, if ever, do you think it is appropriate to voice disagreement against the way someone is parenting their child? Presumably, there are situations where one sees bad parenting and doesn't want their silence to be interpreted as sanction. Yeah, so if it would be sanction, then you should speak up. That's basically the criteria. Um, like if you're hanging out with your friend and they're being mean to their kid, you ought to speak up. You have to say you don't agree, and the kid has to hear it. You can't just say it privately to the parent, or from the kid's perspective, you're on the parent's side presenting a united front. However, if you just see strangers at the park and they're not even talking to you, then you can just leave it alone just because you overhear something. It's not your problem. But if those strangers at the park involve you in some way, like they're giving their kid orders about he has to say sorry to you because he made noise in your vicinity or something, then you are in danger of being drawn into it where the kid sees you as agreeing with his parents, and that is preferable to avoid. So it's good to say things like, oh, don't worry about it, it's fine, he's not bothering me, stuff like that, which is not very confrontational. It's not that hard to say, and it helps the kid have a better sense of reality because he knows your actual opinion. He knows like his parent is being unreasonable rather than his parent actually being right about what strangers think and want. So you have to think about whether you're involved, and most involvement has some voluntary element. Like you chose to go to a park where there are parents and children, or you chose to spend time with a friend and be friends with a person who has a kid. And so you're exposing yourself to parenting behavior and putting yourself in a situation where you're involved with it, which makes you have to speak up more. And that can be a problem. A lot of people don't like criticism of their parenting, so it can be hard to be friends with a bad parent. If you think someone is a bad parent, they're not going to like that. They don't want that kind of friend. But you shouldn't just constantly lie to them for years in order to be friends with them. You should find people who share your values more, who you get along with better. Oh, the other thing I was going to say about introspection that I forgot was that it helps to verbalize your introspection. Put it in words. And the best words are written words, and then review them later. So you're not just considering, am I lying to myself right now? You can review what you wrote 3 weeks ago, and then see if you're lying to yourself then when you have more of a fresh perspective. Okay, back to this. Do I have a link for this? No, I don't think so. Okay, let's see. What the fuck? Fewer years. He means like business coffee dates, not romantic dates. I think, mostly. This is a good one. This is a good one. This is a good one. And applies to philosophy skills. Because getting better at learning helps you get better at learning again, more so. You can use your skill at learning to get even better at learning, which you use to get even better at learning, and so on. So you get compounding there. And it also is a force multiplier for everything else you do. Yeah, some people are like sleep deprived, which I think is bad if you're trying to make intellectual progress, which most people aren't. But if you're actually trying to, sleeping helps. I'm gonna call that a later. I think I might have read this. No rest client. We're good. Okay, back to the blog thing. Hi, 7 people, by the way. Feel free to say things. You can ask off-topic questions or whatever. Okay, back to this. Self-proclaimed intelligent people. Right, so not intelligent people? Is that what we're talking about here? I've not watched this movie, not interested. Okay, I guess I'll just read the quotes on podcast with it recording and then see what I have to say. N asks about today's movies and the philosophy they portray. He says hero movies like include the fallen part of the hero more than the heroic. For example, Logan is the highest rated X-Men movie and has Wolverine losing his abilities and Xavier becoming demented. I've not seen the movie. He says that a lot of self-proclaimed intelligent people say that they like this stuff. And then he gives quotes from Rand. I'm going to read the quotes and see if I have comments. The basic purpose of art is not to teach, but to show, to hold up to man a concretized image of his nature and his place in the universe. That sounds right. Art is a bit of a different thing than like intellectual writing. So art should represent the world and show ideals and values and things to aspire to and whatever. Art is not so much about explaining. If you wanted to explain something, you should just write an explanation. Do some approximation, that sounds pretty reasonable. Like a sculpture is not going to explain, a painting is not going to explain. Even a novel, a fiction book, is not going to explain a ton in general. Rand cheated a little by having Galt give a 75-page speech in the middle of a fiction novel, and the speech itself is a non-fiction speech. It is, him explaining philosophy. It's like she put a non-fiction book inside a fiction book. But in general, if you're focusing on the plot, you're not going to explain everything. People will see what happens and they'll have to figure out some things for themselves. Of course, when you do explain everything, people still have to think. Also, I agree that a lot of movies are not very good. I have not been watching very many movies for years, and I've been watching less TV as well. Right, next quote. The Romanticists did not present a hero as a statistical average, but as an abstraction of man's best and highest potentiality, applicable to and achievable by all men in various degrees according to their individual choices. Right, so a hero is not supposed to be typical or mundane. You sort of take the best of everyone and put it together in one person, and that's what the hero looks like. So in each trait or attribute, it's what someone can be striving for, which is achievable. Sometimes you even go further than that. and you can have a hero that's not realistic in the foreseeable future, but has things that you imagine and you think would be good. That comes up not just with heroes, but more with like societies and technologies. And you have like far future science fiction books. And some of those books are not very good, and they sort of transplant a lot of present ideas, values, cultural practices, etc., into the far future. But some of them are interesting, and they envision a future which is actually different in important ways. And then you can wonder, like, does that future make sense? How could we get there? Can we get any of it soon? Would we even want it or like it? If it's so different than what we have now, you have to actually evaluate it. It can be hard to evaluate if it's good because it's so different than the values you're used to evaluating. Anyway, so yeah, you don't want a statistical average. You don't want a mundane, boring person. A lot of TV and movies try to make relatable characters. And in particular, they make the main character very bland. That way, the viewers think, I could do that. There's a lot of that, where they want a character who doesn't seem better than you. People want a character with no strong opinions so they never get thrown out of the show where they're like, oh, I wouldn't do that, I would never do that. You know, when they have that reaction, then they don't identify with the main character. You get a lot of super bland main characters. Super generic, so that everyone can identify the character with the character because everything the character thinks and does is vague, and he avoids ever having committing himself to anything that 10% or more of the audience wouldn't like. Next quote. That which is not worth contemplating in life is not worth recreating in art. That seems reasonable. If you wouldn't want to think about it, why would you paint it? Or sculpt it, or write a novel about it? Next quote. Pity for the guilty is treason to the innocent. Now that sounds like Ayn Rand. I agree with that. I like that. People ought to focus more on helping the innocent and the good and the best and the great and the heroic people. Help them be even better, rather than sort of ignoring them and not caring about them, and focusing on the bad people, the worst people, and especially the malicious ones, the ones who are guilty of something instead of merely unlucky. And a lot of the poor people are guilty of something. Not all of them, but a lot. A lot of the unfortunates, the victims, played some role in their own situation, especially in the good countries like America. Whereas if it's like a third world country, then a lot more of the unfortunate people are, it's not their fault. Their government caused their bad situation by treating them unfairly and using violence and taking their money and so on. Anyways, there's so much effort to help the people in bad situations. And a lot of it is like pouring water into a leaky bucket. Like they created some leaks in their bucket, and that's why they don't have much water, and then you keep giving them more water, and you don't give adequate respect or attention or help or resources to the great people who can actually do a lot with it efficiently. So Ayn Rand wrote about bright young people giving up, perishing, extinguishing their minds. And she said, quote, in lonely agony, they go from confident eagerness to bewilderment, to indignation, to resignation, to obscurity. And while their elders putter about, conserving redwood forests and building sanctuaries for mallard ducks, nobody notices those youths as they drop out of sight one by one, like sparks vanishing in limitless black space. Nobody builds sanctuaries for the best of the human species. And that's really awful, that a lot of people are more interested in helping the poor and unfortunate, and even animals, rather than smart young people. And then what happens is it's hard to get a critical mass of smart young people, and they're all surrounded by people they don't like who don't like them, and they all give up individually alone. Whereas if there were sanctuaries for the best people, they could meet each other more. And there's not enough effort going into that kind of thing. Giving them funding, giving them meeting areas and housing and so on. You could do that for the smartest people and help empower them to be great and do great things, which would overall end up helping everyone the most. Because if you help really effective people be more effective, you're getting a lot larger return on investment. Next quote. If one saw, in real life, a beautiful woman wearing an exquisite evening gown, with a cold sore on her lips, the blemish would mean nothing but a minor affliction, and one would ignore it. But a painting of such a woman would be a corrupt, obscenely vicious attack on man, on beauty, on all values, and one would experience a feeling of immense disgust and indignation at the artist. There are also those would feel something like approval and who would belong to the same moral category of the artist. Tangentially, all of the quotes I read are from the Romantic Manifesto, from the person who asked the question. However, the thing I read about the sanctuaries for the best of the human species is from the Inexplicable Personal Alchemy chapter of The Return of the Primitive. Now, as to the painting with the cold sore, I agree with the point there. In real life, you might get a cold sore on your lip, and it might be a minor blemish, and somewhat ignorable. However, in art, there's no need to put in a cold sore. Everything you include in a painting should have a purpose. You don't need to include a cold sore unless there's some reason to. Otherwise, it just makes it dirtier or uglier. Like, cold sores are a bad thing. In a better world, cold sores would not exist. We would have a cure for them, and we would just get rid of them. We wouldn't want them to be part of our life, or part of our world, part of our reality. So why would we put them in our art unnecessarily? Cold sores affect our lips, but they don't affect our paintings. Our paintings are immune, so unless the artist intentionally creates a cold sore on purpose. And why would you do that? Cold sores are bad. Okay, honest on podcasting. Oops. First we need to upload these, then I drag them over. Alright, they're uploaded. Drag them to podcast folder. Delete the raws. Not going to need them. Close that. And podcast done. 4 podcasts created. Okay, we've got these chat messages now. Okay, so bad feelings are not the issue. Like, having criticism of text is not a matter of feelings. But, like, I could sort of guess that, but that's not clear, that's not specific. The emails didn't have, like, questions or really things to respond to, as written. These things are... If someone read only the parts Zhao wrote, they wouldn't be able to understand the issue or do much. Like, if you told someone don't let misunderstandings accumulate, they would wonder both how and why. Again, here they would wonder why. And how. How do you recognize this situation, and also how do you maximize clarity? And why do you maximize clarity in that situation? How do you correct small errors? Why is it useful? Why should you do this, and how do you simplify? These things have so little substance to them. Like, they're okay for a start, but I think they need to be built on. Like, they don't show understanding of the article. They're like a step 1 towards understanding the article and the subject material. But they're not like the final step, they're not the conclusion, because there's not much to them. If Zhao can actually do any of the stuff the article is talking about, if he can deal with these things, his understanding of how to do that is not revealed here enough to criticize it and give feedback. But if he's just, doing step 1 of trying to understand part of it and be in the right ballpark before he goes on to step 2 or 3, then these are okay. So there's no framing of what they are. But based on what he said, I think he thinks he's done. Which is, I don't agree with. Also, there are errors here. The word probably. So these are like very, very short things where Zhao barely said anything. He was just sort of repeating what I said, except here he introduces this word probably. The original text did not say probably. The probably is an error. It's not a matter of probability. Also the and CF, it's bad grammar. It would help significantly if Zhao was a better writer who didn't make frequent English errors. Because it confuses the difference between English errors and logic errors or thinking errors. Fixing the English errors helps clarify that the remaining errors are other types of errors. Whereas here, it's just hard to tell if Zhao is confused or if he's bad at English. If the issue is merely being bad at English, he should just fix it. Why not? If you're good at thinking and learning, you can fix that. What? Okay, apparently I fucked up my blog. Oh, why is that at the bottom? Podcast. Details. Back. Details. Back. Details. Back. Details. Listen. And out of that, where they want, like, that seems to work. Well, you lost enough information that I can't tell whether you could do any of the things you're talking about, whether you understand them. So you're not getting feedback on whether you actually learned the material. Why are you doing a summary? You didn't do any framing. I don't know why you're trying to summarize it, what your goal is. But if your goal is to understand the material and to get critical feedback on whether you can actually do the stuff the essay is talking about, then you have not done enough. But your response to that is not to consider whether or not what you did is effective, whether you'll learn, whether it will work. You're just wondering whether it was what you're supposed to do, like you're following directions, like you're obeying authority, like you're acting on someone else's orders instead of thinking for yourself. And that is a bad attitude. You're not going to learn much with that approach to life. Your goal should be to do what actually makes sense, not what you're supposed to do. It can make sense to try out someone's advice, but not because you're supposed to, but because you think, they know things that you don't, in which case you would frame it that way. And you would say, this is the advice I was trying out, this is what I did to try it out, this is why I wanted to try it out, etc. And you've done none of that. There's no explanation of what you're doing or why you think it's a good idea. And if you're doing that thing that I was just saying, and you're doing the framing, then you would be on your initiative as your choice because you think it's a good idea. You would be doing that, and you'd be able to explain what you're doing, and that you would be in control of the overall thing. Like it would be your plan to try out someone else's advice. There would still be your plan overall. It wouldn't just be doing what you're supposed to.
All right, more grammar. So I was supposed to have another video yesterday, but ScreenFlow, which is the app that I use to record these screencast video thingies, exploded, and so I did not have a video. So
I do not have sound. I wonder why. Wait. Oh, so I picked Connect, but I think my iPhone stole it. No? Why is it not Connect? Is it off? I know you heard audio. I didn't. My headphones weren't working. I can see whether you hear audio with the with OBS, like the mic slash aux 2 sound levels. That's how I can tell if the audio is okay, is if it's in the yellow area.
all right, more grammar. So I was supposed to have another
Okay, I can hear it now. Oh yeah, I'm gonna wand it.
video yesterday, but ScreenFlow, which is the app that I use to record these screencast video thingies, exploded, and so I did not have a video. So I'm gonna try doing a video again, and I'm just gonna briefly talk over part of what I talked about in the video that you'll never see, which is this discussion by Elliot from August 13th regarding non-finite verbs, because I thought that these posts were really good, and if people are interested in learning about non-finite verb stuff, you could definitely do worse than to read these. In particular, so me and Anna have been having a discussion about a couple of sentences. This is part of a sentence, but this is the relevant part for the discussion, and then this is another sentence. And basically the issue was the participles. Pretending is a participle, and rising is a participle. So they're both, participles are a verb form which modifies nouns. They serve as like adjectives. And so the issue was, so Anne was okay with calling rising an adjective modifying sun. But she wasn't okay with treating pretending as an adjective modifying actors. And so Elliot wrote a bunch of stuff, and my takeaway from it was, I think that at some level, even though I've explicitly changed my ideas about participles and verbals to accept that they can take things like subjects and all sorts of stuff, I was still viewing this, so Elliot says, at a lower level they are verbs, rise, pretend, that's the starting point. So I think basically intuitively, I was not doing that. I was treating them as adjectives at a low level, even though if you asked me, I wouldn't have said that. And so then, so here's the issue. If you treat a participle as an adjective at a low level, then you can say, okay, rising is modifying sun, that's no problem. But then if you get into this sort of situation where the participle
You still have mailmate hints enabled. Just like a waste of screen space.
as like an object, then you have to decide, run into a dilemma, because like if it would be an adjective at a low level, can it still be like, then is it separate? Is the object to be judged separate? Or can it also, and this whole thing operate as an adjective at a higher level at the same time that this is an adjective at a lower level? Because that would be a bit strange, because the whole thing about doing different levels of analysis is you do it because things serve different functions in relation to other parts of the sentence. So it would be weird if like this was an adjective modifying actors and then this was an adjective as well modifying actors, like that whole thing together. Because then you've got two levels doing the same thing in relation to the same word. So then my attempt at a solution is basically, well, maybe with maybe you can think of non-finite phrases clauses as having like an inside and outside, and the stuff on the inside is the subject or object or whatever.
I like the stickies because they go on top of other windows, I think. So I might use those rather than like streaming notes thing in the future. I might try that. To put a little note in the corner. I mean, rather than this file here. Or the rich text file I had before. So you simplified to the point that no one can tell if you understand the article more than introductorily. Like you understand some of the basics, but then you would have to write more depth of what you're saying for anyone to know if you understand very much, or you could actually do it yourself. Like you understand that at a soundbite level, but your post doesn't express whether you understand more than that or not.
And that is part of the thing which, like, so verbal serve as, something like it's a participle, so it's serving as.
And also, you didn't write a summary of the article. You wrote summaries on like a paragraph by paragraph basis. If you actually had to summarize the article, that's a harder task because you decide what's important in the article. Whereas what you did is you took every paragraph, made no judgments about whether it was important overall, and wrote just a few words about each part. So you weren't making judgment calls where you had to think about what's the point of the article, what matters the most, etc. So you did it in a less thoughtful way than the standard way of summarizing things. it's an easier way. It's okay to start that way if that's all you can do. Like, it's perfectly fine to start there and work up. But if you're thinking that that is a finished product, then you're mistaken.
Serving as an adjective, it's an infinitive, so it could be all sorts of stuff. It's a gerund, so it's a noun. So my idea was like, for whatever that thing that the verbal is going to be serving as at a high level, you could say that like subjects or objects are grouped together within that. And so that's a different kind of thing. So this is an object, so this would be grouped together. And so this whole thing could serve as an adjective. And so we wouldn't look at it as an adjective. We wouldn't look at pretending as an adjective by itself. We'd look at pretending to be judges as an adjective because this is an object, and so these are close together. And that's a different sort of thing than like quickly rising. Because quickly is an adverb. Adverbs, the relationship is looser. And so that was my attempt at like reasoning through this. So basically, I wanted to like justify. Sorry, I think the idea was like, so this is not really grouped with anything closely. So I view this basically as an adjective, and then I can just modify some straightforwardly. But this is grouped with this. So then if this
Quickly rising is a group. That is a phrase, an adverb, and an adjective. And then quickly rising modifies sun exactly the same as very dark ball. You have like the phrase of adverb and adjective, very dark, modifying ball. It's the same thing.
this is mistaken. But if this were at a low level an adjective and not a verb, if that's how you were looking at it, well, you still have to do something with this. And so then you have to come up with some sort of justification. Well, why don't I just treat this by itself as modifying actors, saying which actors, and then do something else with this. So if you want to have the whole expression modify actors, you need to come up with some sort of rationale. If you're viewing this as an adjective at a low level. If you're not viewing it as an adjective at a low level, if you're viewing it as like a verb type of word, then you can say, okay, well, does it have a subject or object? And then you go, okay, well, it has this object to be judges. What are they pretending to be? They're pretending to be judges. Okay. Now, is this verbal object group doing anything? Yes, it's telling you which actors. Well, which actors? The actors pretending to be judges. So you see that if you have the mistaken premise or view that this is an adjective, then you get into a lot of trouble. Like this is an adjective from the first level of analysis. But if you start with the right premise, then you can get to the adjective at a higher level, and you don't run into the same sort of problem. And one point that I liked was, where is it? Oh yeah. So Elliot says words and groups routinely play different roles at higher and lower levels. For example, in John threw the ball, the grouping based on the verb through does not play a verb role at a higher level of analysis. Instead, it plays a clause or simple sentence role. In John threw the ball that was read, the relative clause that was read has a finite verb, not a non-finite verb. And right, and like I have no problem with that. Like I'm not like, oh well, this is partly how I decided that I think my intuition regarding participles was wrong. Like that I was thinking of them as adjectives still, because I'm not like, oh well, this is gonna be a relative clause. So is this like an adjective on its own? I don't have that. Like I have no problem, with the analysis of this. It's like this clause has a subject, that standing for ball, a linking verb, a complement telling us about the ball, and the whole thing serves as an adjective modifying ball. There's no problem there, but I did have a problem with the pretending to be judges stuff. So I thought that was a good post. So Anne had a follow-up to one of the Elliot posts I was just talking about, where she says, how about if we say the following when analyzing pretending, and singing well wasn't enough for the actors pretending to be judges. Pretending is a verbal, a present participle. Pretending to be judges is a phrase. The phrase functions as an adjective that modifies actors. And so I think that sounds reasonable. And I think in realizing some more of the basis of my confusion was that essentially I was viewing participles as like the form of a verb which by itself functions as an adjective. Or actually, I mean before, and you could find some discussion history on this on the list, I was even stronger. I had an even stronger position where I was like, a participle is an adjective, full stop. The connection to verbs is like an etymological historical detail of interest to grammar nerds, but that's it. It's just an adjective.
Here we have the participle hitting with an object, and then the participle phrase, including the object, modifies man. So you can't just view hitting as a regular adjective. In this case, it works like a regular adjective because it has no subject and no object. At least not directly. Like, it's implied that the object of rising, the subject of rising is sun. We're talking about a sun rising, so you have an implied subject for rising, but there's no subject written there. Whereas here, you have an actual explicit object of ball to go with your participle. And participles can do that because it is a verb that can take an object.
That's all, we're done. And so I think maybe the better view is like, you could still roughly think of it as like, well, it's the verb form that serves as an adjective, but it's like, and detail note, it can serve as an adjective by itself, or it can serve as like the head of a clause or whatever, a phrase, which serves as an adjective. And at root, it's a verb. Like at the lowest level of analysis, it's a verb. So I wrote some stuff. So I was looking at this thing from Anne, and I said, that sounds okay to me. And then because we've been talking about participles and participle phrases or participial phrases in this thread. So I said I was thinking about the idea of participial phrases. I looked up some examples online, but I'm having trouble formulating formulating a statement of what they exactly are that I find clear and convincing. One definition I found, and there's this definition from ThoughtCo, which talks about various things. And it says, one thing is it says they're set off by commas, and all the examples that they use are set off by commas. And so I commented the set off by commas part would seem to exclude quickly rising, and the quickly rising sun shone brightly as a participial phrase. It would also exclude pretending to be judges, and singing well wasn't enough for the actors pretending to be judges. I'm not sure about this definition. The page gives various examples, and I marked the participial phrase in asterisks, invented by a housewife in 1889. The first dishwasher was driven by a steam engine. And then I also tried to think of some cases where verbs can serve as the head of a phrase or clause. Oops, I edited this. Which operates as an adjective. It seems like participles, infinitives, and finite verbs and relative clauses are 3 examples. Maybe there are more. So we'll send that. I'm feeling pretty confused, so I'm just putting a confusion disclaimer. It's okay to be confused. All right, we'll send that. So let's see. All right, so Anne had been talking about this Peikoff sentence. When Jack came into the room, he began to remove his coat, a wise move. Now, this is actually Anne's analysis. And then Anne had said, Peikoff calls when an adverbial conjunction or a conjunctive adverb. He says it's both a conjunction and an adverb. Yeah, that's pretty clear from his terminology choice.
Yeah, I was writing something. You can see it actually. I've been playing a mobile game called Archero for the last few days, and I posted on their subreddit today, and I just responded to this guy.
I'd rather just call it a conjunction. It joins 2 clauses. I agree. Most dictionaries agree that when is only a conjunction in this kind of sentence. I'm not sure if I should post all the dictionary stuff I found. I replied, you could try posting some illustrative definitions to give a sense of what you found, meaning like Anne doesn't have to put everything, but she could share some stuff so people have some idea. Most dictionaries, so this is Anne now, most dictionaries give some adverb definitions of when and some conjunction definitions of when. The sentence in this exercise fits conjunction definition. Here's part of what Merriam-Webster says. At what time? When you will return. This is the adverb. And conjunction. Or during that time while. went fishing when he was a boy. So Merriam-Webster splits up adverb and conjunction, but Cambridge says that when is an adverb and a conjunction, and a conjunction. So it doesn't say which one show when is an adverb and which show it as a conjunction, or maybe they mean that when is both an adverb and a conjunction at the same time. Yeah, I would say if it's presenting it like this, it's reasonable to read it as like it could be it's operating as both. Yeah, I just brought up the page here for Cambridge. Yeah, and they have a conjunction entry. Oh, this is weird. So they have this stuff for when. Conjunction.
You shouldn't do things that you think aren't going to work in general. If someone is really specific and they say do this exact thing, and I think it'll work, and you want to try out their judgment, that's okay. But I don't think I gave you like really specific instructions to do an exact thing. I think there was like a lot of flexibility where you could use judgment about what you do. And so when there's judgment called by you and then you're doing something you think is bad, then you're using bad judgment. You're going against your own judgment. I think, Zhao, that your main issue is you just don't participate much. You're not very involved. You don't do much. If you want to learn, you're going to have to work on learning regularly. Just put in more effort and try a variety of things. You don't want like one little project like this to actually be a big deal. It should just be one project out of many.
Conjunction, adverb, and then we've got like a bigger entry. Okay, I find the presentation here weird. We got, is it just like the preview? What's going on here? At what time, at which time? All right, so see, I found a dictionary on my Mac, Macmillan, which has this adverb conjunction thing, but then it kind of breaks it up. See, so it's talking about when can be used in the following ways. As a conjunction connecting two clauses. When he saw me, he waved. That's clearly two clauses. As a question adverb, introducing a question or a direct or indirect question. As a relative adverb, referring back to a noun and introducing a relative clause. I remember the day. Which day? The day when the war began. That's the doing question-based analysis a little bit. Introducing a clause that is a subject of another clause, subject object complement. My proudest moment was, what was it? When I received the poetry prize. Okay. So I'm just gonna say I found the Cambridge Dictionary.
That was a bad idea. I can't change internet connections. Hopefully this still works and I didn't disconnect myself. Someone reply to me. Hello, is anyone there?
Presentation.
Okay. It's still streaming.
A bit confusing. FYI, here's Macmillan's. I'm spelling that right? Oh, an extra I. Entry for when, and they also say it's both an adverb and conjunction, but they break up their discussion into adverb cases and conjunction cases. Say, but they have a note, and I'll just paste the note. And we can send that. Yay. Okay. No, that's cool. So Anne is going through the dictionary, and she thinks the function of when is. I did tell you about it. So we've got a conversation, a discussion. I did tell you about it. When? I don't remember. And it says when is an adverb that refers back to the first sentence. There are some implied words. So the sentence when is something like, when did I tell you about it? When modifies did tell. Right? So yeah, implied words. I mean, that makes sense. Like you could read this as another way to read it is, I did tell you about it. You did tell me about it when? I don't remember. So, okay. If you read it that way, it's clearly not conjoining like two clauses. So, and this is another one. Question words. Rearranging the subject and the verb, and then sticking the question word at the end can get you something that's a bit clearer. Because the question word at the beginning can be weird. But if you think of this as, you are going when, it could be a bit clearer. Or you just, like the definition also fits in there. At what time, as it is, at what time are you going? Okay. What if I start going? This is especially tricky because we've got the verb in contraction with the question word. So you've really got to pull this sucker apart. So the first step is like, when is the baby due? And then you can rearrange. The baby is due when? The baby is due at what time? So as I'm going through here, I'm using a lot of, or at least I'm using a couple of things from my helpful tips, which is substituting in the different words and rearranging the words, and also thinking about implied words. So these are all very helpful because this is some of the toolkit. I mean, there's like explicit analytic steps that I have here too, thinking about sense elements, marking phrases and clauses. But then there's also like a lot of this stuff is more methodical. I think there's a definite general method that you can apply, whereas this stuff is more like playing with stuff, thinking about stuff, getting a little creative.
I like the tip list and that you're using it because it's not just a bunch of generic tips for all of life that you'll like forget about. Because they're grammar specific, you can actually like review your tips when you're doing grammar, and so you can end up actually using them. Because some people they do like a lot of in hindsight, I should have done X, therefore I will add X to my list of 507 life tips, and then they never use any of them. Whereas if you have like a few grammar tips, you can actually use them every time you do grammar until you get better at them. You don't want to have too many. Like if you had 30, that would be too many. But you can learn to get used to and make like habitual or autopilot-y, say 5 tips at a time, or maybe even 10. And it's a way of putting effort into what you're doing. Like it's visible effort that you're actually trying to learn stuff and doing something about it.
But it's good to do both things. So guessing adverb modifies do. Another way to write the sentence is the baby is due when. Yes, I agree. We'll go when you're ready. So we will go when you are ready. That seems like a conjunction. Joins the two clauses will go when you're ready. I agree. So I'm gonna guess this is something what's going on here. So imperative. So implied subject you tell me to start when. So because there's no clause here, so there's no conjunction. Yeah, I found this a bit tricky, but then I did the question-based thing in my head, and I'm like, okay. So verb tell. Who tells? Implied you. Tells who? Me. Tells me what? To start. What about to start? When to start? So I think it's modifying. This is a case where the infinitive is actually an indirect object case, because you tell me to start, and then the John threw me the ball. So to start is a direct, and then since it's an infinitive, it can take, since it's a verb, okay, since it's a verb, it can take an adverb. Let's see if Anne agrees. This is very exciting. Okay. When to start is an infinitive phrase that is the object of tell. This looks good. I really had to pontificate. That was a beard stroker. Okay. Ask him when he's next coming home. So you ask him, imply you, when he is next coming home. This is a conjunction. It's joining. You ask him, and he is next coming home, or he's coming home next if you want to. This next is in sort of a weird place for my preference. Did I error? Let's see. So I just asked Anne, why not a two-clause analysis on this one? Okay, so when do you expect to have the project completed by? Oops, let me not. I don't want spoilers. But yeah, I already. Oops. All right. Yeah, that's an adverb. Another way of phrasing it would be, you do expect to have the project completed by when? Or if there's, I think, when is an adverb that modifies completed, or if there's a by in the sentence, then by when is an adverbial prepositional phrase that modifies completed, and when is a pronoun and the object of by. So I just say, not sure about the by when pronoun stuff, otherwise I agree. So the next sentence is, she was only 20 when she had her first baby, and she was only 20, she had her first baby, the when, conjunction, and agrees. He was shocked when I told him. Conjunction, yeah. I hate it when there's no one in the office. I hate it. There's no one in the office. And analyzes his conjunction, I agree. I went there when I was a child, more conjunction. I was just getting to the bath when the phone rang, more conjunction. Yeah. Let me just think about this for a second. Right, so it's a general fact of so-called subordinating conjunctions that you could either view them as a conjunction or as a relator turning something into something else. But it seems like in general Anne was doing, I mean, I could be making a total mistake here, but it'll be good to clarify anyway. It seems like in general Anne was doing the conjunction view, but then she went with a kind of relator view here. I don't quite follow. Also, I'm not sure offhand, but like I think it'd be weird if a word was serving as like a relator that's making something into a direct object, but then internally within the clause it serves as an adverb. Because like if something, like I can't think of when that would happen. So anyway, I'm just gonna send this. Okay. Oh. So I want to do peacock exercise 2 by my own self. All right. I did my analysis, and now I'll look at Kate's. I mean, Anne's. Okay. Oh yeah, I didn't even coming to the room. Jackie against remove stuff. Let's see. Oh, I made a number of brackets error. I got the right groupings, but the wrong. Okay. Oh, and I guess Anne is just doing phrases. Oh, so I made a mistake. This whole thing is a clause. See, for some reason I was thinking of the phrase as like I was thinking of it as separate, even though this is an adjective. Then it's just the outline gives you the idea, right? So I'm not gonna. So Anne is correct. Okay. Otherwise, it looks good. I'm just gonna start noting. I don't want to lose track of my errors. So for some reason, I incorrectly grouped.
Oh, I didn't see what yeah was a reply to, I don't think. Wait, where are timestamps? I don't know why those were off. But, yeah, I lost track of what that had to do with, and I think I might have missed it.
This
Or I just forgot that I read it earlier. One of those.
as a clause, even though the whole expression is the main clause. I did my own analysis. Otherwise, it was okay as far as the markings, besides an error where I didn't close out, where I omitted one right angle bracket. Okay. Action verb. I didn't specify action verb it. Okay, subject Jack. Okay, we agree so far. Yeah. Infinitive phrase to remove is an infinitive verbal. Code is the object of to remove. His is a possessive. Oh, and says possessive determiner. I say possessive adjective. I think both are fine. Determiners are a type of adjective. You say tomato, I say tomato. Coming into the room is a participial phrase that functions as an adjective and modifies Jack. Within that phrase, into the room is a prepositional phrase that functions as an adverb and modifies the verbal coming. It's preposition into and its noun is room. The is a determiner that modifies room. Oh, I didn't do the meaning. Okay. Jack began to remove his coat upon entry into the room. Right? Or as he was entering the room. Yeah, I think that's fair. Oh yeah, for meaning we're breaking things up more. That's right. Yeah, okay. Right, because meaning is sort of like we do a lot of stuff where we join sentences because we're making choices about what is important and what's the main idea, what's a more subordinate idea, what can be expressed in a word, what can be omitted. And so when we're doing the meaning of the expression, we want to go more back to the sort of we want to like unzip the file of the sentence into its more constituent parts. I will send that. So Anne is quoting me from earlier this year because I started working on the Peacock course and then I sort of hit the skids and then I wound up doing Elliot's thing, which I found easier and better explained. So let me look at this sentence with fresh eyes. All right, so Anne is quoting my previous analysis. So I partially misanalyzed this at first and still have an open objection to Peacock's analysis. And initially said to great sculptors was an adjectival prepositional phrase describing the type of debt. Huh. Like sculptor debt or something. Yeah, I don't think that's quite right. And I think this argument that I have, that I thought up as I was doing this analysis, gives some indication as to why. Because I think right, like, if Italy owed a historic debt of $1 trillion, you can say, of $1 trillion, Italy owes a historic debt. But you can say, to her great sculptors, Italy owes a historic debt. And I think that's related to the adverbial nature. So April, Justin, I think is mistaken, which is okay because he knew listings. Peacock says sculptors is an indirect object. The debt is the object, by which I take him to mean the direct object. So the debt, direct object, is owed, verb, to the sculptors. My prior understanding was that indirect objects do not involve prepositional phrases by definition. Right, so Peacock says sculptors is an indirect object. But I don't think that makes sense because an indirect object is, as Elliot describes it, a shortcut. They are nouns that come after verbs and have an implied to or for in front. But sculptors has an explicit to in front. So how could it be an indirect object? It's just a prepositional phrase. It's not an adjectival prepositional phrase. I think it's an adverbial prepositional phrase. I think Elliot's analysis agrees. He gives the example, I threw her the ball. Her is an indirect object, which means to her, which is a prepositional phrase, modifying through, which is a verb, which would make the phrase an adverb. So I think this current analysis that I have makes sense. My prior understanding was that indirect objects do not involve prepositional phrases by definition, yes. Okay, I'll give a transcript. Oh, this will be interesting. Glancing, I mean, the organization is a little different, but it seems to agree in the essential. I seem to agree with myself in the essential points. One difference is that I try to break down can a bit more as a verb phrase, and I was more descriptive. Where is it? About she in my current one. But yeah, oh, I made the same point about the fragment. Okay, so Anne says I did look up indirect objects when I did this exercise. Some places include indirect objects introduced by to, and some don't. I decided to call these direct objects. Wait, although I don't have a reason other than it seems right to me. Wait, what is she calling direct objects? Let's see if we can figure it out. Here's my analysis. Oh, I think Anne is right here because I was just like, oh, it's a fragment, whatever. But it's still a group of words, so the whole thing gets brackets. I'll just call this summary. Might be a better name. Grammar analysis. Italy owes historic debt to great sculptors. So other than this part.
If you're going to analyze the fragment, shouldn't you note that there's an implied that? It's a debt that she can never repay, I think. So that would affect your analysis and markings and stuff. And see, that also explains why it's a fragment, even though it has a verb, can. Or can repay. Like, can repay is a verb. It's a finite verb, even. So you're saying it's a fragment, even though there's a finite verb. And the reason for that is the finite verb isn't a nested that clause. So you guys sort of left out what was going on there. I think both of you did.
I was just like, oh, it's a fragment, whatever. But it's still a group of words. So the whole thing gets brackets. I'm just call this summary. That might be a better name. Grammar analysis, Italy owes historic debt to great sculptors. So other than the...
I'm not paying close attention, by the way. I'm just occasionally commenting on things.
Other than this part, which is Picasso's, which I find unconventional, I agree. Italy owes a debt. Yep. Preposition 2. Since the indirect object is after the direct object, the preposition 2 is used for the indirect object. Okay, I guess that's how she's explaining it. I'm going to start replying to this because I have a few questions and issues. So where did it start? Some places. So I just said I found alias to be persuasive and pasted some regarding indirect objects and what they are. Where was the next thing? So I agree. I initially didn't analyze this as being a noun phrase. Thanks. I just noted my argument regarding why I think to are great sculptors is an adverb, like that you can move around. So why it's not an adjective prepositional phrase? Okay. So I just pasted my analysis in. All right, call that a video.
Alright, later. End of stream.